Welcome to Ansarkari. Today we are going to discuss about the most important topics for UPSC prelims and mains 2023. So let's start. We will be discussing the newspaper The Hindu, and starting from the first page, as you can see, war causing immense human suffering, says G20 meeting. So, the war, that is Russia Ukraine war, is leading to human rights violation and leading to human suffering, and it is exacerbating the existing fragilities in the global economy. So, it is constraining the growth, it is threatening energy and food security, and it is also elevating the financial stability risks. So these major points, these are the key terms which becomes important for mains. Then the carbon border tax. So India and other countries, they oppose the carbon border tax at COP27, which is being held at Egypt in the city of Sharm el Sheikh. So, the carbon border taxes, which could result in the market distortion and they can aggravate the trust deficit among the parties, they must be avoided. This is being said by India and few other countries. So, you must know from the prelims perspective what is basic. So, the members of basic are Brazil, India, South Africa, and China. Now search about it, what it is all about. Then the developing countries, they have the right to use fossil fuels during their transition to clean energy. They have the right to use the fossil fuels. So developed countries, they have already taken the benefit which has led to greenhouse gases emissions, and now they are trying to stop or they are trying to curb the usage of fossil fuels in developing countries. So that is the main issue. Then in this news, you need to be aware about what is narco test, what kind of permissions you require. So let's see what are the permissions required. So permission is to be taken from judiciary, and according to 2010 Supreme Court judgment, the accused consent is also needed to conduct such a test. So this statement becomes important for prelims. Moving ahead, garbage is the biggest civic issue. So especially for Delhi, now you can see that garbage is a big issue. Landfill sites has become, you can say, they are threatening places for human life, for the people living around the landfill sites, and also for the entire community and people, the inhabitants and residents of Delhi. So you need to think your own blueprint to eliminate the landfills. What can be the solutions that you will suggest to tackle with this problem? So few of them are mentioned over here. As you can see, we need solid waste management. Now here you need to be aware about what are the solid waste management rules. Then the garbage can be used to generate electricity, it can be used for making roads, and obviously there is no rocket science in solving this issue. But at the same time, this issue has become so huge, so big, that like the administration needs to take even these small steps and ensure their effective implementation. So let's see what is the next issue. Okay, so regarding the Polavaram project, which is important for prelims, you need to be aware about it is located in which state, on which river. Then in the picture, as you can see, this is about Sri Vishwanath Swami temple. So just Google it and find out. it is located in which state, try to know about its art and architecture. Then it is a part of the famous Rath Sangamam. Then India has shown how to democratize technology. So the key word over here is democratize technology. So technology in India, it is a force of equality and empowerment. So through technology, it has become an instrument, a tool to promote equality and empowerment of citizens. So if we look at few examples, the first one can be Ayushman Bharat scheme, the health insurance scheme, which is one of the world's largest. Then the important role of CoWIN platform in vaccination. Then Swamitva scheme, where we are using drones to map land in the rural areas. Then there is reduced scope of corruption because of use of technology. Now coming to editorials, this is about G20. So since this topic you might be seeing everyday news but with new developments, so let's see what do we have today. So India's presidency, which begins on December 1, so India is going to host the G20 summit in 2023 and India has taken the charge. Now world faces economic hardships and global recessionary trends. In addition, there are other challenges which needs to be dealt by India when it is going to host the summit the coming year, which includes the polarization between US, European Union and Russia. So we need to take a balanced approach so as to ensure that all the participants participate in the summit next year. And even at the SEO summit, the Honorable Prime Minister of India said that this is not an era of war. And also, from the prelims perspective, India is going to host the SEO summit the next year too. So G20 summit and SEO summit in 2023 is going to be hosted by India, which is a very big achievement, we can say. So if we look at what must be the focus of the G20 summit next year, we can say that given the financial difficulties because of the pandemic, that is one challenge that we need to come out of, and we are recovering at a slow and steady rate. But what are the future perils that we need to take into consideration and prepare for them beforehand? So that includes climate change, global warming. Then the next big issue is food and energy shortages. Given the growth rate of population, then you have terror and conflict and bridging the digital divide. So these are the key points. Please memorize them or you can note them down at one place and later revise. Now, the first meeting between President Biden and Xi Jinping has been held, where the result has been that we need to manage the competition responsibly. So managing of competition requires responsibility. It needs to be managed responsibly and maintain open lines of communication. So this is the development so far. And when we talk about Iraq, after 3 years of caretaker government, it has finally got an elected government. Now let's see how things will unfold in Iraq. Now, coming to a very important topic which talks about transparency in free trade agreement negotiations. So here we are going to compare about what has been the India's model in FTA negotiations so far compared with the UK's system, how it negotiates the FTA agreements. So the negotiating FTAs with countries, India is negotiating FTAs with countries like European Union, Canada, UK, and Israel, and it has already signed one with Australia and another one with UAE. So we are going to sign, or so many FTAs are under process. So, what are the things that are being covered, or you can say, what are the issues that will be handled or that will be tackled under these FTA agreements? The first one, as it relates to free trade, so tariff reduction, which will impact the entire manufacturing and agricultural sector, then rules on services trade. Thirdly, digital issues such as data localization. Fourth, intellectual property rights that may have an impact on the accessibility of drugs. And fifth, the investment promotion facilitation and protection. So, these things will be covered under the FTAs. There will be negotiations held on these issues, or on these, we can say, dimensions or agendas. So, living in a democracy, the people, the citizens, they expect transparency and greater scrutiny of the FTA process, both during the negotiations and after the negotiations as well. But what happens in India's case is that there are closed door negotiations and little information is available about what are the objectives that India is keeping in mind to sign such FTAs, and what are the processes being followed to, achieve an agreement on both the sides. So, in a democracy, we need transparency. There is no harm in people knowing about the objectives, because in the future it is definitely going to help in analyzing the achievements of the respective FTAs being filed, being signed, and how they are, working out, whether they are impacting positively or negatively on the economy, on the social fabric of a country. Let's see now what is the UK's model and what can we take from it. So, there is a department in UK which is called the Department of International Trade, which publishes a policy paper, and it very precisely lays down what are the strategic objectives behind negotiating an FTA, and then it lists what are, going to be the advantages, like economic gains expected, then distributional impacts, what are going to be the environmental impacts, and labor and human rights dimensions. Then, talking about India, the commerce industry is at the helm, and it is the nodal body dealing with FTAs. So, on its website, it publishes bare minimum information about FTA negotiations. So, hardly any information that is available to the public that can be reached out, and so that even we get to know what are the recent developments as far as FTAs are concerned. But as we say, the bare minimum information is available. So, Commerce Ministry, it also undertakes stakeholder consultations and interministerial meetings, but there is no public record of these discussions and the government's response to the concerns of stakeholders. So, there is reluctant approach on the side of government, we can say. Then, in India, there is no mechanism for any role of the parliament. This is very important point. There is no mechanism for the role of parliament in ratification of treaties, including FTAs. So, focus here that entering into treaties and matters incidental to it, that is parliament, such as negotiations, signing, and ratification, they are within the constitutional competence of the parliament. Sorry, they are within the competence of the parliament. So, this statement becomes very important. This can be asked in prelims as well, and this entire topic is important for mains also. So, if we boil down this entire discussion to four key points, India needs to first make clear what is its economic case for signing the FTA, what are its strategic objectives which India is aiming at. Secondly, we need to the executive should be under obligation to consult all the stakeholders. Thirdly, Parliament should constitute a committee as it is in UK that will scrutinize the strategic objectives. And fourthly, the executive should place the FTA on the floor of the Parliament for a certain duration so that there is healthy debate about the FTA that is yet to be signed. So I repeat these 4 points again. We need to first outline the strategic objectives. Secondly, there is a need, or there is an obligation on the part of the government to consult all the stakeholders, form a parliamentary committee and scrutinize the strategic objectives, and fourthly, a healthy debate in the parliament. And after that we should go for signing an FTA. So as I said earlier also, that in the facet of democracy, it is important to hold the executive to account for its actions. So accountability of executive, one of the major and important principles of democracy. So I hope this topic is clear, and you can just pause the video and just go through it once on your own. Now moving ahead, again a very important observation made as far as the electoral bonds is concerned. So a study says, basically the ADR report says that unknown sources of income has increased after the electoral bonds entry. So this is a stark observation and very disappointing, because the objective for which electoral bonds was launched was to increase transparency, a robust mechanism to, ensure financing to the political parties, but it has rather backfired, and it has, increased the problem for which it was, introduced, but the problem has now increased. So we'll be seeing at different facts. So let's first discuss about few statements which are important for prelims. So the scheme, it was amended, wherein additional period of 15 days for the electoral bond sales in the year which have the state elections was introduced. And before that, the scenario was that these electoral bonds, they were made available for a period of 10 days each in 4 months, that is the beginning month of each quarter, that is January, April, July and October, within exception years in which the Lok Sabha polls were held. So this statement can come in PT also. Then the methodology of receiving money is absolutely transparent. This was said by the Solicitor General of India. So he said that the methodology of receiving the money is absolutely transparent because the money was received in the SBI account of the Delhi branch, and it is impossible to get any black or unaccounted money. So that's true. But here the issue is the increase in the unknown sources of income. Now, ADR report, as I said, according to the ADR report, that is Association of Democratic Reforms report, it says that the unknown sources of income has increased following the introduction of electoral bonds, achieving the opposite of what it was intended to do. So it has failed, we can say, in certain areas, and this thing is backfired. So ADR, it classifies, now this part, it becomes important for prelims, so just pay your attention. So ADR, it says, it classifies the income of the political parties into two major categories. So the first one is the known sources of income, and secondly the unknown sources of income of political parties. So under the case of known sources, it further classifies them into two types. So, voluntary donations, which are made above 20,000 rupees, whose donor details then they are further submitted to the Election Commission of India. This comes under the known sources, donations above rupees 20,000, and the details are submitted to the Election Commission of India. And the second type is the other sources of income, such as sale of movable or immovable assets. So these are the known sources of income of the political parties. Now, coming to the unknown sources, it includes the donations below rupees 20,000 via electoral bonds. I repeat, the donations below rupees 20,000 via electoral bonds comes under unknown sources, and this thing has increased over a period of time post the introduction of electoral bonds. And also, the details of the donor, they are not available for the public. However, it is available to the political party in power at center, because SBI being a public bank, they can easily get the information about the donor, and but it remains hidden from the public. Now, also a very important statement that an amendment was done to the Representation of Peoples Act by the Finance Act 2017, which created a provision to exempt the parties from declaring funds collected using the electoral bonds. So, there is no obligation on the political parties to declare the amount of funds they have collected using electoral bonds. So instead of making the system more transparent, the government is making it more opaque. Rather, the other way around should happen, because we are moving towards transparency. We are making things more robust and effective. But here, the things are going in a reverse manner and they are being made opaque. So that is the development. And now, when we look at the figures, if you look at table 1, you can see the percentage of unknown income sources when we talk about the national parties in the year 2014-15 to 2016-17. It was 66%. But in 2018-19 to 2020-21, it has increased to 71%. And when we look at electoral bonds income as a percentage of unknown income, it has 80% share, which is huge. This is really huge. Now, electoral bonds, they were major reason behind the rise in the unknown share of income. So it is like electoral bonds are being blamed for this increase in the unknown sources of income to the political parties. And the expenditure of elections has also increased over a period of time. And when we talk about the national political parties, BJP has cornered a lion's share of electoral bond income, and the percentage share is 67% of the funds that are donated through electoral bonds. They go to BJP party between the financial year 2018 to 2021. So there were certain important facts and also important information from prelims perspective. Now, NASA's Artemis mission, it will be sent to moon, so you just need to know about that. Now, this topic has been discussed a lot of times, which is who should pay for climate damage. Obviously, the developed world needs to come forward, and even in the past, a lot of promises were made regarding providing climate finance to the developing world, which are not yet fulfilled. So, in COP27, few developments have taken place regarding climate finance. There were discussions. Now, let's see what is important for us. So, there are options like financing the developing world or the underdeveloped countries by the developed world have been discussed, as I just told you. Then between 1751 and 2017, 47% of the carbon dioxide emissions they came from US and European Union. 47% of it, like almost half of it from US and European Union. Then India is among the top 7 emitters of greenhouse gases emissions. But when we look at the per capita emissions in India, it is far, far away and it is like very low when we talk about India and compare it with the other developed countries. Like US has 14 tons of CO2 equivalent, then 13 in case of Russian Federation, 9.7 in China, and for India it is only 2.4. So in per capita emissions case, India is better placed than other countries, and developed world definitely has a higher share of it. Then coming to an important topic from the perspective of GS3 mains, that is economy, we will be talking about inflation. So what is the target level of retail inflation? That is, obviously you must be knowing, it is between the target range of 2% to 6%, and from the past several months the inflation has surpassed the upper band, that is it has surpassed 6%, but in October we have seen that it has dropped to 6.77% when we compare with the October in 2021. Now, what has been the reason behind this fall is the favorable base effect. So, this is important for PT, and you need to understand that the base effect basically here, since it is favorable, that is, it has aided in declining the inflation. So, in when we talk about October 2021, inflation was relatively high, and even if it has fallen by a smaller amount, it would come out to be a huge fall when we are comparing it with October 2021 and October 2022. So that is the base effect. So here the base is October 2021, and obviously inflation was high at that point of time because of the pandemic, and we are not yet sure that inflation has whether peaked or not. We cannot celebrate it right now, and it is a situation of wait and watch for the time being. So RBI, it has been raising the repo rate by 50 basis points from the last 3 monetary policy committee meetings, and it is expected that it will increase it by 35 basis point in the next MPC that is going to be held in December. And when we talk about US, even there inflation has cooled down in October, but it is still, you can say, higher than the target of 2%. And if US is going to increase the repo rate, there is going to be pressure on RBI also to increase its repo rate, because ultimately we can say that the capital market, that is the stock market, is linked, the Indian stock market is linked with that of USA. And also you can see that FIIs, that is foreign institutional investors, are massively selling in the Indian capital market and shifting the capital to US, because being a safer option, the interest rate is also being hiked, so they are selling, and which is a cause of concern for India. Now moving ahead, talking about demonetization, the finance minister has told the Supreme Court that it was a step to boost the formal economy. So, when we talk about what has been the benefits of demonetization, so it was a transformational economic policy step, and the benefits includes there was phenomenal growth in the digital transactions, then fake currencies shrunk, and they saw more income taxpayers. So taxpayers, the number of taxpayers increased, basically broadening of the tax base, digital transactions, and fake currency decline. And if we look at the data, the digital payments transactions in 2016, there were 1 lakh transactions in entire 2016, and the value equaled to rupees 7,000 crore. But now in October 2022, only in 1 month, there were 730 crore transactions recorded. See the massive increase from 1 lakh transactions to 730 crore transactions, and the value has increased to rupees 12 lakh crores. So this is the figure of only 1 month in 2022. No doubt, digital transactions, the size of the digital economy has definitely increased. And when we compare the real growth rate, it was 8.2% in 2016-17, 6.8% in the financial year 2017-18. It has declined. And as we were talking about the carbon border tax at COP27, there was significant increase in the consumption and production of the fossil fuels in the past years by the developed countries. Definitely, they were in the developing stage back then, and there was high consumption and production of the fossil fuels, and now they are saying that developing countries, they need to move away from the same resources, that is fossil fuels. So these are double standards. This is irony, we can say, on the part of the developed world. And let's see, what do we have more? So railways is building walls to prevent cattle ingress. So this can be one of the ways, but as it is shown that it will be implemented in the most worst affected areas, obviously I don't think so that it is going to be applicable for, at pan India level, building walls on railway tracks on both the sides. But yes, will help out in the worst affected areas and help save those animals and also keep the people's life safe. Now talking about Poland, there was a small development. However, now it is not huge concern that few missiles were fired in Poland, and it was being claimed that they were fired by Russia. However, Poland says that the missile that hit it was the Ukrainian stray. So Poland being a NATO country, it would have led to adverse impacts, but this is a situation as of now. And when we talk about the GST Council, so this is important for PT and from the topic economy. So rule 6 of the council business norms, it mandates a meeting at least once every quarter, that is in every 3 months, but the GST council, it has failed to meet in the last 4.5 months. So the periodic meetings are not being held, and there are several issues as far as GST is concerned, which needs to be resolved quickly. And when we look at the garment exports, they have slided by 21%, because if we look at the market share, US, European Union, and UK, they account for 85% of the shipments from Tirupur. And because of high inflation, these economies, they have reduced their expenditure or the demand for garments, and that is the reason for decline. So that is it for today. I hope you have understood the key topics, and do not forget to subscribe to the channel and share the video as much as possible. Thank you.